Hey guys, it's Lexi and welcome back to my channel. I figure what better way to get to know me than me talking about books while I do my makeup. So that's essentially the gist of this video. I'm gonna start right now. This is the watermelon toner from Glow Recipe. I rub it in. I know you're probably supposed to pat it, but I really don't care because it feels better this way. So let's just jump right in. I think I started really getting into reading probably like 2 or 3 years ago when I had first moved in with my boyfriend. Also, this is the Peach and Lily Vitamin C Moisturizer. My boyfriend is now my husband and we live together in Las Vegas, and that's what's given me the opportunity to invest in like collecting more books. I started out absolutely hating the idea of a Kindle. I was so against it. I don't know what was going through my mind, but I was like, no, if I'm gonna read physical copies. And I'd say like 70% of the time I prefer hard copies to Kindles. But once I got my Kindle in probably like October or something, I haven't been the same since. Actually, I think I got it for my birthday in September. I'm a Virgo. I'm gonna use the NYX Marshmallow Primer. I've said this quite a few times, but my love for reading stemmed from when I read the Red Queen series by Victoria Aveyard. This looks like sunscreen. I don't go outside, so I don't need sunscreen. I started it because I was going to a camp that summer, like a few years ago. I was going to be a camp counselor, and we didn't have access to our phones during it. So I decided to invest in a book. So I literally just went to Barnes & Noble, and I found like the first section in front of me that said like popular, and picked it up and I was hooked. I finished that book faster than I've ever finished a book because like after that is when I started picking up reading, but that's what really like locked me into it. Oh, I also have a cat. She's probably gonna want me to play fetch with her. She just dropped her pizza. Let me go throw it for her. Do you wanna play fetch? Go get it. Anyways, let me find my foundation. I don't think I want to do like a full face, so I'm going to use the Fenty Beauty Eavesdrop stick in shade 2. I know it's not really a foundation, and I don't really want a foundation, so it kind of works out. Okay, so before that, I've always been a writer. I shared this story quite a few times, but when I was in elementary school, like in first grade, which is when you start learning to write and read and communicate your thoughts, that's when I'm gonna keep looking in the viewfinder because I don't have a mirror up here, I'm too lazy. But that's when I really fell in love with writing, and I remember going to writing classes over the summer at a local college. Yeah, that bell's my cat in the background, just ignore it. Free entertainment for y'all. My mom would take me to these classes hosted by the college where I could just learn how to do creative writing, and I remember one of those we had to write like a mystery spy novel, so I did. Which, are you done? You would think for a sort of mystery creative writing class you would have the ability to write whatever, but we were told it had to be about whatever that situation was, so whatever. Okay, I've been blending out the wazoo. I'm gonna use my little mirror real fast. But I have always just had collections of notebooks and journals where I just write short stories, like just always. I have a huge collection at my parents' house back in Texas there's this like tote just filled with these notebooks, and I even got into writing little playwrights, little scripts, because I used to be an avid member of my local musical theater when I was a kid. I stopped when I got older because I can't really sing that great, but as a kid it doesn't matter. And now I'm going to go in with the Fenty Beauty concealer under my eyes. The shade's kind of darker than the one that I use for my spots because that's what I think looks best on me. Right now, I think my current favorite genre is a mixture between fantasy and romance. Romantasy, yes. The problem with reading a lot of fantasies is sometimes they can burn you out, and that's been happening to me a lot lately. I get into these reading slumps, and 9 times out of 10, it's after reading a big, huge, heavy fantasy. Not that the fantasy is bad, it's just there's something different when you're reading a romance that's like short and sweet and you know how it's gonna end. You don't have to do any world building because it's set in Earth. But with that being said, fantasy is what got me into being a big reader. I did not start reading romance books. Actually, I only read fantasy. Like my entire collection before I probably a year ago started expanding my horizons was strictly fantasy. I read a lot of Sarah J. Maas, Jennifer Armentrout, Victoria Aveyard, Leigh Bardugo. That was the only thing I was interested in picking up. I'm putting concealer on my eyes, by the way. I can't say too much negativity about fantasy because that's what really got me into reading, but right now I think I'm more into the little short romance books by like Emily Henry, Abby Jimenez, Hannah Grace. I remember the first book collection that I fell in love with, like that I wanted to tell everybody about, was the Shadow and Bone trilogy from Leigh Bardugo, which is a Netflix show. And I read all the books and then the Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, and then I watched the Netflix show, and the show does not do the books justice. And I know for some people that series was very hit or miss for them. For me, it was a big time hit. That was probably one of the books that like motivated me to pick up more fantasies than typical. I have two separate concealers I'm going to use for spots. I'm using the Benefit Industrial Concealer in shade number 1, and then Tarte Shape Tape in Fair Neutral. I'm going to go in with the Tarte first and then the creamy one next. Right now, I have a goal to read 100 books this year, but when I first really picked up reading, 5 books a year was max. When I was in the Disney College program in like 2022, after I had read the Victoria Aveyard Red Queen series, that was the summer of 2021. So 2022, when I went off to Disney, I brought the ACOTAR series with me, and I was there for like 4 months or so, and I think I read maybe 2 books in the ACOTAR series. I was very busy, but I just wasn't as invested, and I remember restarting the first book quite a few times because I just kept forgetting about it, and then I would pick it up and not remember anything that happened. Which is funny because even to this day, when I pick up a new release like Fearless that I'm reading right now, I can't remember what's been going on. I read the ACOTAR series and I liked it. Like, it lived up to the hype in my opinion at the time. And I wanted to continue down that path because I was really interested in Sarah J Maas. Yes, I know you could consider her maybe overhyped or something, but I don't know. So I decided to give Throne of Glass a try. Life-changing. For me, when I started reading that, I had never read a series that big. I had never read something so crazy. So picking up Throne of Glass was the thing that did it for me. I was in love. I remember when I read Kingdom of Ash, I finished it in maybe like a week, a little over a week. I have never felt the amount of feelings I felt while reading that collection. And it is one of Sarah J Maas's like earlier books. It came out before ACOTAR, and there's really not any spice, which I do enjoy spice when reading, but I feel like nowadays it's just becoming so prevalent in everything that it kind of takes away from building the tension. Like, if you're just throwing these two lovebirds into a room and they're all over each other, but there's no like build up to it, it just feels so not it. With Throne of Glass, that was not the case in my opinion, in my humble opinion. I'm going in with my Charlotte Tilbury pressed powder in shade number 1 in this little poof, and I'm just going to powder sort of where I put concealer. My friend, like one of my best friends, she's also heavily into reading, and she has tried to read ACOTAR so many times. Right now she's on the 2nd book, but she gave up and she set it aside to read something else, and I just want her to power through because personally, in my opinion, that I think everyone can agree with, the 2nd book is the best in the whole series. That's where like everything just kind of clicks. She'll know once she gets there. Okay, that's good enough for now. Now I'm going to use actually the one that my mirror is. This is the Fenty Beauty Cream Bronzer in the shade Butter Biscuit. I don't want a heavy bronzed look. I just want something to add color to my pale face. Right now I have read maybe like close to 200 books since I've really been picking up this hobby of mine. My collection is pretty big in the physical copy realm, but I've also read a ton of Kindle books. I've read a lot of Frida McFadden, who does thriller books, and all of her books pretty much are available on Kindle, but my goal is to read all of her books, so I kind of think if I'm able to accomplish that, maybe I'll slowly start acquiring the physical copies because I feel like it would be such a cool trophy, essentially. I don't think I brought my brush for my nose, but I could just rock it. Or I could do the fan method, you know, where you like, I'll do that. Might as well. My mom is also very into reading right now. Her and I both kind of synced up when it came to this hobby. She doesn't read the same exact stuff as I do, but I have given her some of my books. I have like hair in my mouth. And she did read them and like them, so maybe I'm to blame on her current addiction. She prefers more like historical nonfiction, or like she's very into true crime, that type of stuff. So we can bond over our love of books, but in different genres. Oh my gosh, I need to blend that. Thank you, lighting, for showing me the truth. So kind of a little off topic from strictly reading, I am writing. I don't know if I'm ever gonna like publish it. We'll see if I'm gonna do a self-publishing route because unfortunately the market is extremely saturated with fantasy, With that being said, I've been writing my own sort of fantasy novel for the better half of like a year. I've been working on this idea for so long that I have felt very passionate about. Also, I'm going to use this e.l.f. Putty Blush in the shade Turks and Caicos, I believe. So I've been working on this idea for a while, and I just know that unless it's something that's so incredibly nuanced, which to me I think it is, but it may not be to everybody else, it's going to be really hard to find an agent that's willing to help you go to market and publish it. So I'm going to try to keep querying. I've already started the process, even though I'm not finished with my manuscript because it's a long process. And I also just want to see if I can get any feedback. Unfortunately, most of the feedbacks people get is like a generated automatic message saying, oh, we're sorry, your work doesn't match with what we want. Sometimes I wish when you get a rejection, it would be like, do this or don't do this, you know? But I also know that because the genre I'm writing right now is just so popular, it's going to be hard to find someone who's willing to take that risk. Because it's so popular, there's a lot of chances it's just not going to do well and it won't be a good investment. I have started a couple little romance books on my computer that I'm just not as invested in. I think that they might be good, but I would rather sit there and kind of create this world in my mind than make a romance that's more contemporary. I think I just resonate better with fantasy characters. Also, I saw something the other day and someone was like, why do all these fantasy books have us in the main point of view of a woman? And for one, have you heard of Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings? These like major fantasy books that have been turned into these huge franchises are all about boys as the main leading character. So I don't know. And also I think the genre of fantasy is probably geared towards women more. That's just the way it feels to me. Call me crazy, but reading those types of genres is such a great way to escape from everyday life and society has a lot to say about women. So finding a genre where the woman can be powerful eats for me. Sometimes reading a fantasy book I appreciate when there's no like nuances of real world problems in it, but then again sometimes I do because you can relate to it and feel more close to the character. It's very hit or miss. It depends on what it's about, but I just love a strong, powerful woman who can like fight a bunch of people and then rule a kingdom and no one wants to test her and they all believe how magical and powerful she is. Also, I just realized I did this out of order. I need to do my brows because it messes my skin. So I'm just gonna have to fill them in and brush them and not gel them. I'm just gonna set it real quick before I do my brows. This is the Urban Decay All Nighter Setting Spray. Oh, hair in my face. And then I'm gonna use this Morphe Micro Brow Pencil in the shade, couldn't tell ya. I should probably figure that out. Hazelnut. Also, I forgot to say, this is the e.l.f. Jelly Pop Glow Stick. She's Seen Love. It's like a highlighter. I just like it because it smells really good and it makes my face look shiny. So currently, like I was saying earlier, I am reading Fearless by Lauren Roberts, part of the... My cat's eating in the background, but that's fine. Part of the Powerless trilogy. I would say I'm like 30% of the way through. I'm trying to finish it within a few days because I just have a couple little romances over there that I am just excited to pick up. I actually really enjoy this. I was kind of worried when I picked it up that it wouldn't hit. Unfortunately, I think I say this a lot, but with fantasy books or just any book series in general, as more and more come out, if it's a trilogy or a series, they tend to go downhill. That does not feel like the case for this so far, but we'll see. I'm not even halfway through, so my mind is probably going to change. Also, that applies to Throne of Glass. I was worried it would get worse as it went through, but it gets better, and you can kind of see Sarah J. Maas's like writing style evolve. Hi! Now I get to move on to powder. Okay, I'm doing this a little out of order, but this is what I think makes my makeup look the best. I'm using the Morphe Translucent Setting Powder and that little poof again to go over my cream products, and then I'm going to put powder products on top, but I'm not going to set that because I don't want to. Also, that's what my setting spray is for. Anyways, just kind of dab the excess off because I always pick up way too much. I have a lot of books that I'm looking forward to being released this year. I've been also heavily into thrillers, like I was saying earlier from Frida McFadden. Picking up her Housemaid book is what got me interested in thrillers. And then on Goodreads, I've won a few giveaways where I've gotten thriller books. For me, I'm more hesitant to try authors that are more up and coming in the fantasy genre, but with thrillers, I will literally read anything you put in front of me. And I'm working on that. That's just like my own sort of bias. I don't know why I am that way. I think it's probably because I have tried a couple fantasy books that I've like not really heard anything about, and it didn't match up to what I was expecting from it. I will pick up any thriller you place in front of me. So that is also one of my favorite genres. I sort of noticed that last year a lot of the books I was reading in general just had an immense amount of spice, like heavy romance with inappropriate scenes. And this year that's not so much the case for me, and I'm not actively going out of my way to find those kinds of books. I probably was last year if I'm being honest with myself, but this year I'm more focused on just reading something for the content and the variety of it all. I'm gonna use my Hoola Light bronzer, and I'm gonna use the same brush I just wiped off my powder with because it's fluffy and it's also right in front of me. I do have TikTok to thank for my original love of books. It's since merged into YouTube, and that's what I've been consuming as my content that has to do with books. But at first it was 100% TikTok, especially because when you would go into Barnes & Noble, there were always tables that say inspired by TikTok or book talk or popularized by it. So I definitely have that to thank. I think that's probably why half the books that I read to start out with are books that everyone has read or has at least heard of. And there's nothing wrong with that. I always say books are popular for a reason. They wouldn't be as talked about if they weren't good, usually. I have though gravitated towards YouTube. I think I'm trying to open my concentration. I probably started out with TikTok because, you know, the videos are so short and I could just look up topics and scroll throughout all of them, but there's just something about 30 minutes of watching someone read that's comforting, and you can read with them and it can be like a whole thing. But maybe that's just me being biased because I've also been posting more content on YouTube. I forgot my blush brush in the other room, so I'm gonna use this again. I'll wash it, maybe. I'm gonna use the Tarte Shimma and Shake blush. It's a sort of like coral-ish pink. Right now, I have a routine when it comes to reading. My husband goes to work pretty early. He's usually out of the house by like 6:45. And when we first moved here to Las Vegas and I was getting used to his schedule, I would go back to sleep when he left. But now I stay awake. I sit in bed and I rot for a little bit, and then I go make my coffee. I find a cute spot, a cozy spot. Usually it's on the couch. I have this little like corner set up for myself, or sometimes it's on my bed, and I read. I don't put a time frame to anything. I just mood read. I read as much as I want for as long as I want. It feels like a more productive way for me to start my day. Granted, I do always start the day on my phone. Oh, she wants me to throw her string. Hold on. Kiwi. I do start the day on my phone, but I really start it. Like I get moving and grooving with a book. Right now, I only have one car that I share with my husband because we originally thought we were moving to Japan. He sold his car, and so we've just been using my car. Well, he's been using it to work. So I'm not able to go to bookshops to read and cozy walk around, which is probably a good thing because the amount of money I'd be spending is, I don't even want to think about it. I'm going to use the Benefit highlighter in the shade Tickle. We are looking at cars. He just texted me actually during this video. He sent me a couple cars to look at, because I do have a job interview on Friday if I have a car to get to it, hopefully. And I can't really drive him to work because he has PT half the time. I don't know, it just makes sense for me not to drive. And I've been keeping myself pretty occupied. I've been reading a lot, I've reorganized my bookshelf, collected more, entered a lot of giveaways, focused on homework. So I'm staying busy. Real quick, I'm going to set my face again with the all-nighter spray. I like to set in between the dry step and the wet step. But I don't like to set with mascara on if I remember because it gets extra runny. And I'm also not a big mascara eyelash person. I just hate the process of taking it off. I'm debating between the Sky High and the Tartelette Tubing. This mascara is amazing. I think it's like the best one ever invented, and I just love the color on this. But we might as well go all out. I'm gonna have to do like a huge face wash session later anyway, so I might as well. But the tubelet one comes off easy. Oh wait, silly me. I really don't feel like doing a whole eyeshadow look. I'm gonna use this Makeup Revolution Burn Book palette, and I'm just gonna pick one color and dust it all over my crease. I used to be a big eyeshadow look girly, but I don't know what inspires me. I just have to be in the mood, and right now I'm in the mood for something simple, and honestly these colors aren't simple, so I'm changing my mind. I have this OG palette that's definitely expired, but the Nude eyeshadow palette from the Balm. See, like this sultry brown is amazing. It's so light and gentle. It's definitely expired. I think it's like 10 years old. It's from my mom. For me, my mom grew up she became an esthetician, and throughout her training school, she also had to do a lot of makeup looks because esthetician is like skincare, and she was also a massage therapist. Through her school, she learned how to do a lot of makeup. So she was a huge makeup collector. She loved all the OG makeup beauty gurus from the early 2000s on YouTube. Like Candy Johnson was her number one girl. She also loved Graveyard Girl, who isn't really like a beauty tuber, but she still kind of counts. So I think my mom is where I got kind of my enjoyment of makeup and a lot of my OG stuff like this. She also has all the original Naked palettes, I believe. She has a huge collection of MAC lipsticks, an ungodly amount. Now I can go back to my lashes and talk about books. Thinking about tropes, I have favorites. I also have qualms with certain ones. Unfortunately, I think the most popular one is like Sunshine Rainbow Girl, and then Dark Broody Guy and Enemies to Lovers, which I love. I will eat that trope up every time. It just feels very repetitive and not as like creative or fresh. I am probably like 90% sure most of the fantasy books I've ever read have that sort of genre going. So in the one that I'm writing, I kind of have twisted it to a more friends to lovers situation, where the guy is a little sort of broody, but he's not mean. And that's the thing with a lot of these books, is the guy's like mean to the girl and then she falls in love with him. Girl, why are you falling in love with your bully? Maybe it's just me. I could never fall in love with like my enemy who talks bad about me. Perhaps that's just, I say that, but then if you were put inside a fantasy book, who knows? I also really love pretty much any friendship trope between two girls. If it's a girl and a girl who are besties and they've been raised together, I just love friendship tropes. I think a lot of these books sometimes have our main leading ladies, whether it's fantasy or romance, she's sort of lonely. Like she's always just alone, or she has like one or two friends who end up getting a boyfriend or girlfriend and they just sort of forget about her. But I love a good friendship trope. Have like 3 really good friends. Monica, JC, and Hannah are probably like my best friends. So anytime I read a book with friends or writing the one that I'm currently writing and I include friendships in it, I relate them to the people I have in real life. For one, if a friend does something dumb in a book, I'm like, oh, my girls would never do that. So it just helps me think of things that I would ever incorporate into my books when I get to writing. I've also played with the idea of making a sort of romance story about loosely based on my husband and I. Oh my gosh, can that eyelash separate, you'd think? Separate! Whatever. My husband and I have a meet cute story about how we honestly came to be that I want to share with the whole world. I could put it into a book, it's just I'd have to adapt it a little bit because it's super cute to me, but realistically it probably doesn't eat like I think it does. I can't find my brush, so I'm gonna use this to fix this eyelash, hopefully. Separate! You look silly. Detach. What if I just like pluck it? Ah! Get off. It's also a little odd for me doing this because when I get ready, I listen to my music, specifically emo music. I listen to Pierce the Veil and Sleeping with Sirens. Those are like my top 2 artists and they have been for as long as I can remember. And finally do my lips. I'm going to use the lip liner in the shade Natural by NYX. She needs to be sharpened. I do have maybe on my TBR cart less than 20, maybe even 15 books. I see videos of these people who have like 50 or 100 TBR books, and while that's definitely the dream for me one day, I don't even know how that's possible. Actually I do, because I just buy books that I see when I'm out. I just personally don't know if I'll ever get to that because I do think I'm pretty good at picking up books on my TBR. I do have some that have been there for a while because they sounded interesting when I bought them, and then after thinking about it, they just didn't sound as interesting, which I can totally see as the reason for a TBR physical collection to be so massive. Also because I read a lot of books on my Kindle, that's probably why it's not as big. I probably have just as many books on my physical TBR as I do on my Kindle. Okay, that's good enough. I just need to find my lippy gloss. I thought I brought one. I know I have a lip gloss behind me on my desk, so I'm gonna grab it. This is the Fenty Beauty Gloss Bomb in the shade Fussy. If I could only have one makeup product on, it would be lip gloss. My purse probably has like 4. Although I do tend to keep lip oils with me when I go out. I have like 2 Clarins lip oils and an e.l.f. one and another one. Beautiful. I think this completes the look for me. I could do another spray of setting spray, but I'm not going out, so I'm not going to waste the product. I don't think this would be considered a heavy beat, but also not natural. Then again, I'm not a beauty guru, so. Actually, let's top it off with this Fenty Beauty matchstick in the shade Confetti 04. I don't know. I got this for my wedding literally a year ago. Focus. It is a glitter purple stick. I put it on my finger and dab it. It's a good thing I'm ending now because they're doing yard work outside. Anyways, thank you so much for sticking around to the end of this video and getting to know me for a little bit while I chat about books for half an hour, and I will see you in my next video. Bye guys!